Darren, can you read the preamble for us?
Yes, give me just a sec. I'm going to actually share it so everybody can read it along with me. So I'm not going to say speak for you, Dusty, but we find that due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to Addendum 6 to Executive Order 01-20 of Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, we confirm that we are providing public access to the meeting by video conference with additional access offered through telephone. We are using Microsoft Teams for this remote meeting. All members of the Planning Commission have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through Teams, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if desired, participate in this meeting. Planning staff will provide instructions for public participation using Teams before the hearings are opened. We are providing public notice of instructions for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access the meeting on Teams with a computer, smartphone, or regular telephone in our posted meeting agenda. Instructions have also been provided on the town website at essexvt.org/agenda center. Click on your government, agendas and minutes, and navigate to the desired meeting date. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please use the chat feature within Teams. You can get there by using Alt-H, or email or call OWISO at omakaku@essex.org, or 802-878-1343. We will continue the meeting if necessary. In the event the public is unable to access this meeting, it will be continued to a time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance of all PC members participating in the meeting.
So this is Dustin. I'm on.
This is Josh. I'm on.
This is Ned. I'm here.
John Mangan's here.
Dave Raphael.
John Alden is here.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, so we have an amended agenda I'm going to call out before we get started. Would like to ask folks to mute their microphones if they can in between, so we have minimal discussions. There we go. Hang on, my agenda's coming up. So amended on the agenda this evening, we have under other business, we have 3 items. Mylar for 1, 3, and 5 Valley View, 1 Allen Martin Drive, and the ETC Next work schedule from OISO updates.
And Dusty, I'm going to add an amendment to the April 30th minutes when we get to that item.
Okay. So first item on the agenda, as normal, is opportunity for public comments. The one addition tonight is we have a consent agenda item, and public comments is that point in which anyone, including commissioners, should offer questions on the consent agenda or comments about it. This is the time to do so. So is there anyone in the public that would like to offer public comments? And I would like to note for the record that Commissioner Schumacher has joined us.
Thank you. And do you want to swear folks in for this?
Sure, that'd be a great idea. Do we have members? It looks like it's Chris, and we have anybody else on the board from the public? All right, so Darren,
I'm sorry, you got Peter Edelman. I'm sorry.
Okay, Peter. So does anyone that will be presenting testimony this evening for you all, you swear that any testimony you present will be truthful to the best of your abilities?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'm on mute. Sorry, I'm on mute. Yes.
All right, thank you. And Darren, Sharon, you guys will keep track of if anybody joins us
yes.
going forward. Okay, so back to our public comments. This is the opportunity. Comments for the planning commission for items that are on the agenda, or in the case of this evening, questions or comments about the consent agenda item, which is a minor site plan amendment for Black Flannel Brewing, requesting additional outdoor seating and a wood storage shed. Commissioners, questions on consent agenda? Members of the public? Hearing none, I will move forward. Is that Peter?
No comment.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anybody. So we'll move on now to the consent agenda item itself. I would take a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved.
That was David.
You.
Moved by Shu, seconded by
Ned.
Seconded by Ned. All those in favor of the consent agenda as presented?
Aye.
Nay? Motion carries 7-0. Consent agenda is approved.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you,
Yep.
board.
Look forward to seeing everybody
Best of luck.
in person. Thank you.
Okay, the
Dustin,
next, yes.
may I just ask, Darren, did you want to start recording, or we just
Oh,
relying?
shoot. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, and I am also recording on my little recorder.
Okay.
And channel 17 should be recording as well.
So we are.
Sure.
Yep, we are now recording. Thank you, John. Just to recap for the record, we read the public meeting notice. All commissioners are present, as well as Chris Kessler from Black Flannel Brewing and Distilling and Peter Edelman of EOF Outlets, as well as Channel 17, of course. And the consent agenda for that item, which is a minor site plan amendment to add outdoor seating and a woodshed to 25 Essex Way, Black Flannel Brewing and Distilling, just passed unanimously.
Okay. So moving on. Now we have an opportunity for discussion on PUDs. And David, thank you for sending that link out earlier.
My pleasure.
Darren Owiso, how are you envisioning having this discussion moving?
So this is Darren. Staff provided you a short memo to summarize the issues we wanted to address. Let me bring that up. And really that was just a jumping off point. And the idea is that we've had a number of challenging reviews with PUDs and pretty in-depth discussions on some of these issues, including lot dimensions, footprint lots, frontage on public and private roads, and clustering and open space design and the use of waivers. Most of these we feel are related to the fact that we're now seeing more applications for PUDs with fewer than 6 units or lots, which were not allowed prior to February 2017. And there's, was a very big discussion at that time about, what the lower limit on PUDs should be. And there's no philosophical, opposition to smaller PUDs, but they do sort of create some of these design and logistical issues that we haven't really had to deal with until now. So we can provide examples of some of these, but we hope you've all read the memo, and we can go through them topic by topic and then sort of have a freewheeling discussion.
So to help a little bit, where
everybody getting that?
Dusty,
What
go
was
ahead and
that?
try and unmute yourself when you're ready.
What was that, Darren? Do you know?
I think something happened on Dusty's end, something related to audio and maybe internet connection.
Okay.
So Dusty, go ahead and try and unmute yourself. We'll see if that fixed itself. Nope. So Dusty, that didn't work. Try disconnecting and reconnecting maybe.
Darren, use the chat as well in case he can't hear you.
Okay, Dusty says he will be right back. Hopefully that will not take too long.
Was that
Joys of remote meetings.
was that Dustin's computer? What was going on there?
Yeah, something was going on with his audio. Couldn't begin to tell you what it might have been.
But
The weird thing is, the video was fine.
Yeah.
I don't think my hearing is going to be the same. I actually threw my other computer off over there. I just grabbed another one.
So while we're waiting, Darren, did you notice that the raise your hand thing now is there?
Yes. So can you all of you guys can see that too?
Yeah, I can now. I couldn't see it last week.
Yeah. So I think Microsoft had added that just for users internal to an organization and not to guests at the last meeting, which is why we didn't mention it. But if you all can see it now, that's fantastic, and we will use that for as much as we need to during public comment, and if anybody does want to say something while someone else is speaking. So
okay. I'm going to try this again. You guys hear me this time?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And only the things we want to hear.
Killed the air conditioner, so.
Huh.
And I opened the window. So now we get the neighbors mowing the lawn. Okay.
All right. So I think you were speaking last, Dusty.
I was asking for you guys to, as a staff, would you like us to get to tonight with this? Just, I know we had the memo, but.
Yep. So we wanted to discuss some of the issues we keep seeing in PUDs. We've had 84 Susie Wilson Road. We've had 1 Leclerc Woods, the La Fountain project on Brigham Hill Road. We had the Rotunda subdivision on Chapin Road. All of these were relatively small PUDs, fewer than, well, except for Leclerc Woods, fewer than 6 units. Well, I guess 84 Susie Wilson was 6. But in any case, because they're small and because of how they're laid out and designed, we don't have a whole lot of more developable land in Essex, and things are getting squeezed into tighter and tighter spaces. It's created some of issues with the designs that people present and what our regulations allow. So one of those is there's a provision in the PUD regs that allows for a reduction of the minimum lot area without an increase in density. And that's something that was discussed at the last round of zoning updates, of maintaining the same density that you would under conventional subdivision, but allowing clustering to happen essentially by increasing the effective density of the developable area. So one issue that's come up is the Planning Commission can further reduce lot sizes from what is normally allowed within PUDs, which is prescribed in the dimensional standards and in the PUD standards in terms of frontage and sides and setbacks in general. So the question is, do you see a use for that provision, since we allow clustering and don't really have a minimum lot size for PUDs as long as they meet the frontage requirements. And it's sort of just ingrained in that. But in terms of creating separate lots, you still have to meet that frontage requirement. And if there's still a lot that's, for instance, 75 feet along the frontage, then it's got to have some depth to it. So you're essentially having a minimum lot. You're creating lots with certain minimum dimensions, and it's just unclear how that's supposed to work in a PUD. And we were wondering if there's a better way to allow development of small lots from a bigger picture perspective, because we want to encourage that in the right places, particularly in urban areas. But it seems like it's kind of loose, Wild West in terms of how lots are created right now. So that's one issue. And a related issue is the use of footprint lots. Right now, the way our regulations read, it seems clear to staff that the only way you can use a footprint lot is in a multifamily townhouse development. So multifamily meaning 3 or more units in a structure, and townhouse meaning on 2 levels as defined in our regs. So all other uses of footprint lots, including for commercial and for detached single unit dwellings, are presumably not allowed. So we wanted to clarify that issue with you and make sure that that was the intent of that, or if you wanted to explore different uses of footprint lots or just more clear standards for small lots. And a quick review of a couple of neighboring towns. A lot of the smallest lots are 5,000 to 7,500 square feet and have frontages of maybe 60 feet or 75 feet. So just for comparison, it seems like that's a standard elsewhere.
So one of the things, this is a WISO, one of the things that I think makes this conversation so complicated is just that a lot of these issues are interrelated, and they really sort of come down to the core question of what is a PUD in Essex, and what do you want it to be? Is it a subdivision? Is it subdivided lots? Is it multiple units on one lot? How do you picture PUDs, and how does PUD fit in as a regulatory tool in the context of all the other tools development tools that the zoning regs provide?
So in some ways, we're all chomping at the bit on this one.
It feels as though actually, Darren, maybe you could walk through all of the points, because then you start to get the sense of, okay, well, one feeds or informs another, and answering one might put you in conflict with another, depending on how you're looking at the big picture.
Mm-hmm. I see John raising his hand.
Yeah, just saying this is also where I sent to you and Sharon that the state of Vermont actually does have a very clear description of what a PUD is. So maybe
yes.
Pull that up to look at it.
Yep, let me grab that. And I will also run through the other issues that we wanted to discuss real quick while I pull that up. So one of the issues that's sort of related to frontage and lot dimensions and sizes is whether private roads create frontage or if it's only a public road. There's even in the definition of frontage in our regs a sort of conflicting statement that frontage can be created on private or public roads, but no new lots shall be created except along a public road. So that tells me that if it's already an existing private road, then you can count the frontage there, but we're not making any new ones, which is a little difficult when you get into a PUD that does have a private road, such I'm trying to think of an example, but it could happen. Yes, yeah. So 57 Saxon Hill Road was a private road that was just an existing logging road, and I can pull up that plan if we want to discuss it. But basically, some of those lots didn't have frontage unless you counted it along the private road. So that's one issue there, and it's also a question of, do we want to allow new private roads in PUDs or at all? particularly in the rural areas of town, because that's a lot of extra development in places that maybe shouldn't see a lot of it. And, you know, if you have a 300 or 900 foot long driveway in the AR or the C1 zone, is that really good development? Is that something that should merit a PUD and, you know, flexibility from our normal standards? And the last thing just to touch on before we dig way in is clustering and open space design. So we had this really good discussion with 97 Chapin Road of what is clustering and what is, you know, open space in the context of a PUD when we already have protections for floodplains, wetlands, steep slopes, and potentially ag soils and river corridors. So if all of those things are automatically protected under normal development, what more is a PUD getting us? And should open space be active recreation space? And if so, that should be clearly said in the regulations. It's not right now. And also the only real clear requirement is that it has to be at least an acre. But even then, it's not clear whether that's a separate 1 acre lot that's not part of a dwelling lot, or if that can be shared open space between two separate single unit dwellings, or if that's only meant to be in a townhouse development where everybody shares all of the open space that's not part of their building. And then it's also this question of how do you define clustering, especially when you've only got 2 units, because clustering is easy to see with 6. If they're close together, they're clustered. If they're spread out, they're not. But if you've got, you know, like especially with the Joe Rotundo one existing dwelling way up on a hill, and you could put another dwelling up there, but that's not necessarily the best design. So they put it, you know, lower in the meadow area, which was closer to other dwellings, but not clustered with the existing one. So these are some questions we wanted to, you know, bring to you for discussion.
Sorry, John has his hand raised.
Yep, I just wanted to get through what I was saying, and I will now pull up the definition of PUD.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to what you were saying, and then when you consider the fact that a lot of those lots or any single family home can have an accessory unit, there's a possibility in some cases for a subdivision of a lot, and or a lot can, if it's large enough, can be a duplex. Are those enough tools to provide the opportunity for development of a lot? And do we want to call that a PUD and grant it a number of waivers in the context of a PUD?
John?
We've been wrestling with PUDs in the village as well, and the thing that I always go back to, which is really hard to put down on paper, is you're asking the developer or the applicant to provide you something that you want in exchange for something that you're willing to give. And we've decided that our village regs are very ambiguous about what we actually want. And so part of the reason that you know, we need to keep trying to think about what it is we're holding out as a carrot is you know, we want something better than normal development. And the reason that you're doing all of this to begin with is that you want to clearly entice somebody to say we're doing something better. And I think you bring up some really good points about all of the things that are already in the development regs. How do you clearly tell your applicants what you want so that they can make a decision as to whether to apply as a PUD or not? And so you can decide whether to accept it as a PUD or not, because just because they say they want to do a PUD doesn't make it a PUD. And that's a very hard thing to regulate. Thank you.
All very useful.
Josh has his hand up, and Dusty, you may have missed it, but we've all discovered the raise hand function, so I think people are trying to use that. Yeah.
Yep, no, I see.
Yep.
Josh, go ahead. You're on mute.
Oh, yep. I just wanted to second what John just said and say that philosophically speaking, I think the sort of compromise between what we give up and what they give up for the benefits of cluster development for both sides has to be done in the regulatory phase and not at the table with a developer there. And I think the fact that we've been giving out a lot of waivers shows that we've been doing the compromise too late in the game. I think the regulation should be like, all right, you do a PUD cluster, here's what you get, here's what we get. And so they should be much more open and shut than us sitting at the table with a developer debating whether this is really a PUD and does two houses put far away from each other but near other ones. Like, those sorts of issues, I don't think they should be happening as much. We shouldn't be having as much in the way of waivers. That's all.
Yep.
You know,
Ned, here, I guess. My turn?
Yep, go for it, Ned.
Okay. No, I think the outline that Darren has put together, is good. And I think we do have some choices, and we need to better define what we really want here. And I have one. I guess the footprint lot issue is certainly one. I see the PUDs, if done right, as a very good way to develop more affordable housing in town, and I think that is something that we need to write in to any changes we make. Smaller lots with single units. It's been done successfully all over the country, and it's something that we certainly want to consider, especially as the developing land is quickly disappearing here. Okay, I'm still processing. Go ahead.
Hey, David, thoughts?
No, I mean, the reason I sent out the state regs is I think that there's some clear statutory reasons that the state wanted to encourage PUDs and allow them if they tied in nicely with, municipal plans. So, I mean, I don't think we're going to solve it tonight, but I would see an approach as being stepping back, looking at the statutory enabling language, looking at our municipal plan and what it is we're trying to achieve, taking a look at some of the pitfalls we found ourselves in, and then try to ask ourselves how to either tighten up or loosen it to get to the goals in the municipal plan, and what are some of the unintended consequences that we might find ourselves dealing with if we open this up. Like, are there some long driveways that could all of a sudden become private roads with a bunch of lots on them? So, I mean, I think there's a bit of work to be done here.
Agreed.
I have to profess, this is Dustin, I got to profess that, we start getting into the details and my ignorance starts coming out clearly. But I look at PUDs and what we're doing with these, and I'm feeling like I'm not as upset about doing waivers for them, because I kind of feel like PUDs are a way around zoning regulations. And if our regulations aren't robust enough to handle the development that we want, it's like we're using a PUD to bypass them. And I'm a little uneasy about really beefing up the PUD option if we're considering it as an alternative. And I may not be explaining this well, but if it's a tool for development, great. But if it's a tool to get around our zoning regulations, not so great. And that's what worries me with a lot of these things. I would like this is if we could use these as a tool to develop neighborhoods like the ones that were built in the early 60s, Lamel development, some of the early Pinewood streets, some of the heritage areas where the houses were clustered, but they were clustered because that's what zoning allowed. It wasn't, or there wasn't zoning. It wasn't that we're now making an exception. So I'm hesitant to embrace the idea of like really beefing up PUD so that it becomes an easy way around the zoning regulations. That's what I'm hearing. That's how I'm hearing it right now. So convince me otherwise.
I got an easy one.
Go for it.
The first paragraph in your authorization and purpose section of PUDs is that we actually encourage them and they're preferred over conventional subdivisions. So we're not trying to make them a way around anything. We're saying we want you as a developer, we want you to use this option. We like it. So you need to beef up your language or you need to take that sentence out.
Well, I think we got to go back to the state statutory language about why the state wants us to use them. I mean, it's right in the goals. It's to encourage compact pedestrian-oriented development and redevelopment, to implement the policies of the municipal plan, to encourage a development in the countryside to be compatible with use and character of surrounding lands, provide flexibility in site. I mean, there's a whole. It's the statutory language can't be any clearer.
Okay. Oiso, you had a question, comment?
Yeah. My comment was that if we can describe what we want, and I think most of what we want is open space. I think that what people are using it for is a workaround to get a bunch of single-family homes on a lot without having to subdivide, but they all have separate garages, they all have separate entrances, they all have their own open space, and maybe there's a gestural portion of open space, like we saw at 84 Susie Wilson Road, but it's not meaningful right now. And I think it's a matter of looking at the regs and figuring, like, underscoring what it is that we want, as opposed to just having this be a shortcut to a subdivision.
Okay.
Or more units in a subdivision.
John Mangan, and then we'll get over to Darren, and then Sharon.
I guess I kind of want to reiterate what David said. I know after he sent, I reviewed the statutory requirements, and then I looked up. If you go back a couple levels in that, you see all the definitions for that, and that's where I was saying if we look at the definition, it's the whole reason for PUDs is to allow such waivers to happen. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that's what they're intended for. You know, as long as you are, moving whatever development it is in the right direction. And what a PUD looks like, from at least in the past few hours of the minimal research I've done, can be a lot of different things, including full-size houses. It doesn't necessarily have to be, look like what would be a condo or something like that. And I'm by no means an expert in this, but just from what the minimal time I spent in it today, that's what I'm seeing.
Thank you. Darren, you're up.
Thanks, Dusty. I think everybody's sort of hitting it on the head, and there's a few ways to look at it in my mind. So I like what John said about, if we're going to, and John Alden, that is, if we're going to say we want to encourage PUDs, then we should just say what it is that we like, what kind of development we like, and be specific about that. And I think there's two different types of development that we're seeing PUDs used for. One is the rural sort of clustered, keep the open space, except that that's not really being used well. And I think we could tighten that up by being clearer about what should or shouldn't be included in the open space and how much of that lot you should be taking up when you do a development. And I have some ideas about that, and BioFinder and Vermont Conservation Design comes into that a lot. Did anybody else miss what I just said? Oisa said she missed some of it.
I heard you.
My screen froze.
Okay. So I can reiterate briefly, but we should try to be specific about the development we want. And there's two types. One is the rural sort of open space preserving PUD, and the other is, I think, more of an urban clustered, dense development PUD. And I think our regs are targeted at both, and they don't do either very well. So I'd advocate for looking at both of those and maybe just baking them into the current, the main regulations, which we're starting to do with ETC for the urban stuff, and we just haven't really done a lot with the rural open space level things yet. And the ACCDs, the state's Zoning for Great Neighborhoods project, is putting forth a lot of great thinking on how to do small lots in urban areas and do good design. And sort of, I think we have to think as much about, how things are, how the buildings are oriented and what the streetscape looks like in those areas as much as how the lots are laid out and how dense they are. But the other thing about PUDs, and I'm not sure if this is true, but it seems like they were kind of created to allow for townhouse developments and mobile home parks and sort of condominium areas that had shared land without having separate lots. So I think that should continue because those are obviously something that people want and should continue to have available. And that might be where we end up with PUDs as, okay, normally you need this, but the exception is if you're in a condo.
Okay. Sharon, you had a question, comment?
I just feel like since we tweaked the PUD regulation from a minimum of 6 lots, I think it was, to 2, I feel like the 2 lots have created a lot of issues as well because they're shy a little bit of whatever frontage, and they're circumventing a simple parcel subdivision. And you'll see that, or you would have seen that. I think that was the one on Brigham Hill that ended up withdrawing, and due to, I think, maybe staff comments. Darren, you'll have to refresh my memory there, but they just got upset with the process, and now they're going to propose a duplex, which is just through a zoning permit, which folks in the neighborhood would have probably preferred to see a PUD clustered than what the proposal was. So it kind of speaks to all of, they proposed the separation there because the lot itself had wetlands going through the middle of it, and I'm talking about the La Fountain 2-lot PUD. So anyhow, I just wanted to put out there that I feel like the 2 lots, reducing it to 2 lots created some issues as well. That's it.
This is Darren. I'm just pulling up the proposal that Sharon was mentioning, and just to refresh your memory, this is the one we reviewed.
I don't think it made it to the Planning Commission table, did it?
David, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just going to remind, for those of us that were there at the time, remember when the PUD came in on West Sleepy Hollow on the remaining lands of, I think it was Gray's lands, yep. and how we all struggled with how out of character that was for the neighborhood. So that one's kind of in my memory bank as to go back and kind of revisit, all right, why didn't we think that was appropriate for a PUD out in the country?
I think my memory is it was approved for sketch, but the condition was they had to pave the road down to the state highway, so we let it go. But I take your point.
Yeah, you might be right.
Josh, you still have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what I said a little while ago about waivers in the context of what everyone has said. What I was saying, I was uncomfortable with a lot of waivers. I meant in the case that our regulations were vague, requiring waivers. Like in the current analysis document, we talk about how there's no standard definition for clustering. I just meant that I'm in favor of tidying our definitions up so those things aren't the reason why we're giving waivers, and everyone would know going into a PUD what the purpose is. That's all.
Okay. See who else? Owiso. Your hand's raised.
Oh, it must still be up from before. I didn't
Okay.
raise it again.
Sharon, you as well?
I'm good.
Your hand is still raised, that's all.
I don't know. It says, okay,
unclick
lower
it.
your
Okay,
hand. I
okay.
see. Yeah.
Couple things Darren, you made a comment about maybe clearing up the what we're looking for the PUDs, and I think that probably would help more than anything. Instead of just having a PUD that we could plop down on West Sleepy Hollow Road or Brigham Hill Road or Bixby Hill Road, if we had an idea of what we were looking for, that we could even use that. On West Sleepy Hollow Road, we want a PUD that emphasizes conservation of open space features. You know, item number A5 under 4417. That shows, I think if we were to specify this a little bit and understand what we're trying to have that PUD do, not just it's a PUD, I can do it here, I can do it there, I can do it anywhere. Let's maybe give a little more focus as to why we're doing a PUD in this particular spot. What is it? And to John Alden's point, what is it that we really want? You know, what are we looking to get out of this? What do we want to what can we give? What can we get in that spot? So it's going to be different. A PUD on Chapin Road might be completely different than a PUD request on West Sleepy Hollow. And I think that should be allowed. It's not a one-to-one, comparison. And that would make it a whole lot less of a opportunity to just bypass the zoning regulations and know that I want to do a PUD as an applicant. I want to do a PUD in order to not put as many units as I possibly can into a piece of property, but I want to do this and I want to hit that target.
You may have hit the nail on the head there, Dusty, with the zoning district. That might be a big discrepancy.
Yeah, I was going to, and sort of what I was saying before, development in general looks so different in, the rural part of Essex versus the town center. And I think that's what we should be getting back to, and maybe even referring back to the town plan at some level in our PUD regs and saying, in the C1 zone, we want to see, forest land. In the AR zone, we want to see agriculture. In the, town center, we want to see vibrant, street life. And one thing that, one of the developments that we saw that wasn't exactly a PUD, but got at the frontage issue is the Donna Kunkel subdivision, which was on, is it Grayway or Sawmill Road? Thanks, Sharon. So they wanted to create a separate lot for this land that was under a conservation easement with Vermont Land Trust, and there was a concern of, well, if we allow a lot without frontage, are we then allowing a lot of lots without frontage? But I would argue that that was a really good decision that allowed better conservation and better outcomes from what the town is looking for, because now you can have a separate house lot, but this other land is preserved and maintained by the land trust. And I know that in forestry circles they talk a lot about fragmentation, not only of physically fragmenting the forest, but dividing up all the land in forests so that it's under different management, and that just makes it really hard to maintain good healthy forests. So if you were to allow separate lot owners to maybe consolidate lots that didn't meet the normal requirements, didn't have frontage, didn't have access, didn't even have a house on it, but could be pulled into one piece of property that's managed collectively or by a logging company or land trust or whatever, that might actually do a lot for conservation and forest economy in Vermont. And you could call it a conservation PUD as an example.
I guess in my mind, I still see the PUD as an exception, a potentially very good exception, but we should, I think to Josh's point, we should have more clarity. Everybody's been saying more or less the same thing. A little more clarity on what we want a PUD to do. And I kind of look at the the link that Dave sent us, the statute, and there's a lot of good stuff in that. Providing flexibility in site light and site and lot layout, building design, all that. We might not want that level of flexibility in the town center. We might want it to be very much in accordance with what's already there, but we might want that flexibility in, as you said, in the AR districts or someplace where we want to put something. Even the Tiller's proposal out off of Saxon Hill Road was an ideal place to be able to look at something and potentially have done it differently, specifically to do a lot of conservation. So where do we go with this? What's next? Where do we need to get to?
Staff works behind the scenes.
Yep.
They always do.
Yep.
But I think having some good direction from this conversation is helpful. And one thing that we could do for the rural side, I mean, we're already doing ETC, and I think if we keep going down that path, we'll be in good shape on that end. And when we do start looking at regulations, whenever that is, we'll make sure to look at the PUD section and say, okay, what makes sense here and what doesn't, now that we have something in the ETC that's a little more, getting at the high density, smaller lots side of things. And then another thing that's on the work plan that's been on there for a while is Act 171, which is the forest conservation and anti-fragmentation work, and just identifying the forest resources that we want to protect and conserve and how to do that. So I think we could do a planning exercise or dig into that a little bit, and then develop some better regulations out of that. And we could look back at the conservation subdivision regs. We could look to the scenic overlay district and sort of take the same tools that were used there, but instead of it being scenic views, it's intact forests is the resource you want to protect. So we can explore those and bring them back to you.
Okay. Any of the commissioners right now feel that there's something in the conversation, or we've missed something in this conversation, or is this a good direction to go? Is there anything that we need to throw into that mix or give staff more specific directions than we've done so far?
Or is there anyone who wants to work a little more with staff behind the scenes, sort of giving some more guidance, or do you want to just have it all as the entire commission next time we talk about it?
That sounds like a subgroup. That sounds like an ideal, a work group.
Yeah.
Anybody want to participate in a work group with staff on this? Johnny? John?
Yeah, I just sent a chat saying I would, because I've been working on this for a while, and it's a great opportunity to horse trade, but you have to know what you want going into it. And the reason you're doing this is because you think you're going to get something better. You've already got regulations and rules to cover the normal stuff. You got to look at this as an opportunity for trading up. And so if you don't get anything for it, or you have rules that are loose enough to allow people to get projects passed under it without getting what you want, then it's not tight enough. So
I like those thoughts.
So how about this? Darren, when you guys schedule something and broadcast to the commission, and if folks are available and want to participate in addition to John, work with Darren and staff to figure out how to do it.
Hey, Dustin.
Yeah.
This is Shu. I don't seem to have my hand raising ability because this computer is about 3 hours old for me.
Gotcha.
So I do want to give a ditto to John Alden and saying, that the sort of preamble to the PUD section, makes it seem like that's the go-to option for subdivision. If you can do this, let's do this. So we may want to change that up. I agree with him. I just want to ditto that. And I think I would like to be part of this sort of working group also, Darren, because I really appreciate your comments about Act 171, or is it Act 71, whatever it is. Yeah, the conservation stuff is really important, and I think that if we look at the town of Essex and the way it's set up in the middle of these corridors and everything, it really would be good to at least be paying attention to that sort of sensitivity about the conservation rules. That the state has spent an enormous amount of time and effort to set up and to give them some merit. So I would like to throw my hat in the ring on that as well. That's all I have.
Excellent. So leave it kind of open-ended right now. And I think Darren just my takeaway is that there are PC members who are interested in direct participation in this, and work on a presentation back for the whole commission as a whole. And to John's point about the village having challenges with this as well, this might be a topic for, before we do a final presentation or a final discussion, this might be a good topic for a joint meeting discussion, to get some of the feedback on where things are challenging in the village and challenging with the town, and maybe we can come up with some consistent language that could be used for both of our municipalities. That is good enough on this topic for tonight, folks?
Sounds great.
Okay, no hand raises. Okay. All right, onward now. Let's, I think we have minutes. Minutes from when? Minutes, I'll get there. Draft minutes from, slowly I'll get there, May 14th. So can I get a motion for the minutes of May 14th? I need a verbal from somebody who's on mute.
Question first.
Okay.
Am I okay to talk?
Yep.
So I have made some changes, and I apologize about the confusion with the minutes on this episode, but I made some additional changes. If you all read them, you'll notice that line 290 cut out. And so
if we read them. If we read them. Thank you very much.
So I finished that statement, which came directly from Public Works memo, and lines 292 to 296 were repetitive, and I deleted those completely because I called out each of those conditions that they requested. And then I added the standard condition of by accepting the conditions of approval without appeal, blah, blah, blah. So back to condition 28, it reads in its entirety, all new stormwater infrastructure, both within and outside the town right of way, shall be installed in accordance with specifications and details provided within the town of Essex standard specifications for construction. So okay. That's what I've done for changes.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the minutes from May 14th with the amendments that Sharon introduced to us just this moment ago?
So moved.
Moved by David. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Josh. That's one I could see on the screen. Going through, does anyone want to offer any changes to the minutes beyond what Sharon gave us this evening? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion minutes carry 7-0. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Okay. Put her hand down. Good. Okay, other business.
So I have 135 Valley View Drive Mylar. You recently reapproved it due to them missing the 180-day deadline. However, another issue popped up being that the plat did not show septic easements that were on the wastewater approved plan. So they're asking for you to allow a corrected Mylar to go in showing the easements. Nothing else has changed. So I guess I'd ask for a motion for us to accept that, or a verbal accepting it. And Dusty, that would need your signature.
I'll move we accept it. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Is that Shu?
Yeah.
Okay. All those, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
The next one is 1 Allen Martin Drive, and I provided you a memo from, I believe it was Brian Courier, and as well as the plan. Basically, this plan was approved by the Planning Commission in the fall of 2019 for the construction of 4 warehouse buildings. And there is an existing 30-foot shared easement that's been in place since, I think, the Duvals were the original owner, and they created a simple parcel subdivision. The existing paved driveway is 20 feet. At a recent Act 250 hearing, the landowner of the abutting lot raised concerns about increasing the pavement from 20 feet to 24 feet, which is what you guys approved. And so the applicant is now asking the Planning Commission to keep the paved existing 20 foot easement existing. I'm sorry, let me say that again. The applicant is asking to keep the 20-foot paved portion as is until it reaches his lot, and then spread it out to 24 feet. And the reasons evidently for the abutter was citing runoff. There was no place for the runoff to go to a stormwater treatment area. So I guess the question is, also I wanted to tell you that at the 2019 hearing, the approval passed 5-1. Dusty voted no. And some of the comments were, so I'll just use your last names. Daly was not sure you feel strongly about requiring paving for the parking area. Shu does not see 3 parking spaces in the storage area as an issue. Mengden, not a few, sorry, I can't read my writing. Not a fan of the loading docks. Johnny, tempted to not require paving for the parking spaces. Raphael echoed circulation concerns, and Brusso was concerned with accessibility. And again, the motion passed 5-0 with a condition to take out the requirement for paving the parking spaces. So I guess my question to you is this something you want to do on the fly to amend the required paving total 24 feet and let it remain at 20 feet as you enter into the parcel on that landowner's parcel, and then pick up to 24 feet once you get to Andrew Hood's parcel? Or would you like to see this as a consent agenda?
This is David. I think for transparency, I would vote for consent agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Shu. I mean, where is the applicant and the abutter are in agreement on this? What's the feeling?
No, my take on that was they have a 30-foot easement, and O'Leary's office believes that they, if it came to an argument or a contesting at Act 250, they'd probably win. They're trying to expedite the issue and not create those hassles, I guess. So they thought, well, if the Planning Commission was willing to allow it to keep it at 20 feet on that abutter's lot, that will just resolve the issue.
I'm with David. This is Shu again. I'm with David. I agree. Let's put it on consent so we can see more information and kind of understand what's going on there.
Yep.
Can we go back to Dave? Your hand is still raised. Do you have something else?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I keep forgetting to unraise it. I apologize.
Put your hand down.
Where's Mr. Villamere when you need him? I'd like to ask maybe where did the 24 come from? I mean, that's a point of contention. I'm not, where did that come into play?
Yeah, so I did not see that, and I apologize. I left the file on my desk when I left today, so I can't give an answer to that. But I have to, I have to say that I also support consent agendas, since there is some disagreement between the two landowners. Even though it would be resolved, I do agree that it would be a cleaner approach. They did ask me to put it forth to you, so that's my 2 cents. So I don't know where. I think
we'll
probably came from the fire department.
Okay. Well, that's something worth knowing, because if it came from the fire department because of trucks, then I personally would not support reducing it.
Okay.
We're looking for the fire. I mean, that's I think very significant. Darren, you had a comment?
I was just going to say, I think probably the reason they did that is that in the public works specs, the minimum paved width for a paved urban street is 24 feet. So that's, basically on the existing lot and existing nonconformity. So that's probably why they wanted to upgrade it and bring it up to standard. So I would agree you should at least have it go through consent and get public works input on it.
Yeah, I personally think we need that. So does anybody feel it doesn't need to?
No.
I think you got your marching orders, Sharon.
Yep, no, that's fine. Thank you. Oh, and I have one more thing.
No, it's not on the agenda. You can't have one more thing.
So I need a correction to the April 30th minutes and that's on the Burger King application on Center Road. I neglected to include deleting condition 3B, where it reads, the landscape island shall be moved adjacent to the east side of the building and adapted into an outdoor patio area. In addition, the extra drive aisle just east of the building shall be eliminated and the entire site shifted east outside of the wetland buffer. It was clearly decided and in your motion. I missed it when I did the minutes. So I would need a motion to amend the April 30th minutes to add that in, and then I'll have you sign a new letter.
So moved.
Taking out that.
Second.
Moved by David, seconded by Shu.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? 7-0, pass.
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay.
Adjourned.
Let's wrap this puppy up here. Uiso. Let's talk about ETC next. What's our schedule look like?
Okay, so Darren and I finished going through the executive summary through chapter 5, reorganizing a lot of things. We'd like to, but we don't have images in it yet, just because the images are a little bit time intensive if you don't agree with the reorganization that we have. And so we wanted to run it by Josh and John Alden before inserting the images, and then we were going to take a stab at adding the images back in, and then having a discussion about and then we also need to have a discussion about chapter 6, which is the conclusions.
Okay, so that's detail. What about the overall? I mean, I'd like to understand what our timeline targets are. What are we looking? Not specifically the work to be done, but what are we trying to? When are we trying to get it completed? When are we trying to deliver it to the select board and so forth? I mean, that to me is what I'd like to have an understanding too, is what our targets are, so that we can make sure that we provide you with any necessary feedback in as prompt a fashion as we can.
Well, I think we need to set new targets because before COVID, we had a deadline which we then had to amend because we weren't ready for it. And so now we've just been working to get it done, but let's set a timeline. When would you like to see it?
Well, again, we're feeding this, pushing this back to you. I mean, we want to see it, and we've been trying to see it for as much as possible. But if you feel we need a work session to go through missing chapters, then let's schedule one. If you feel it's a full agenda, let's schedule a full meeting for it and knock it all out of there. If you feel it's something we can add to a meeting with only, a single agenda item, that's great. What does the select board have on their plate? I mean, are we looking to get it in front of them before they take their early summer break? That's kind of what we got to have an idea. So that I think we need that coming from you guys to some degree. What are the other constraints? I mean, if we can do this in the next month, let's do it in the next month. But if we do it in a month and the select board's not going to look at it for 6 months, then maybe that takes it off from our urgency list a little bit.
Okay, well, I can check in with Greg and find out what the select board agendas are looking like. This is, just about I haven't been involved with your process for very long, and so I don't know.
That's fair.
To be frank, I don't know.
That's absolutely fair.
So
it sounds like you mentioned both in an email and tonight that you want some guidance both on what you've got done so far, and I think you'd mentioned chapter 6.
Yes, chapter 6. I think chapter 6 is next steps. I think that's going to be very important for you all to make decisions about what you see as the next steps. I mean, that's the whole discussion about form-based code, the hybrid form-based code. do you want to keep things in as placeholders? Do you want to take them out because you just have no interest in them whatsoever? I think that's a lot of that comes from you, and so I don't feel that I'm in a position to make those decisions. Maybe Sharon and Darren are more clear about what it is that you're looking for. But
We're a fickle bunch, so I would say
okay. So I think you'd like to see it again.
Sounds like we should schedule a work session for chapter 6.
I think so.
But if we could, so I think that, so Sharon and Dina reviewed the work that Darren and I had done, and I think that they both agreed that it would be useful to have the images in it, and I think that it would probably be useful for you as well. But again, and Darren can disagree, but I really think that we've reorganized it, and I think it becomes a lot more clear, but reformatting the images is going to be a little bit of a pain, and so for you not to be on board with the reorganization before we do that, I think is probably a waste of time. I
don't disagree, for the record.
Okay.
Well, let's set it. Hang on, Sharon. Let's schedule a work session. Let's. Do we have light nights coming up? Do we have any nights at this point that don't have, like tonight would have been an okay night if we weren't talking about PUDs. I mean, if we could do it like we did with the PUDs, is have a discussion and so forth after consent agenda.
Yeah, we'll check our schedule and we'll put it on the first available light one. I think they're all pretty light, to be honest with you. The next one, June 11th, we do have our site visit, so that will start at 5:30, I think is what we said. But we'll get it on as quickly as we can and get answers back to you.
Yeah,
so Owiso did ask if you would like staff to pass it on to Johnny and Josh, or what do you guys think about that? And that would be before the picks, just so that they can maybe get a flavor, or do you want to see it as a whole body?
I mean, at this point, they've already gone through this a few times, right? And if staff has had their input and so forth. I'm not, Johnny, I'm not speaking for you, obviously, at this stage, but I mean, do you need them? I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot. And
if you're comfortable and you feel as though we've done a good job with organizing, Sharon is the most neutral third party that we have. Darren can't comment on this because he was intimately involved.
Let's get it onto the schedule and post it for everybody. What you've got. I mean, let's get it on the schedule.
Okay.
And let's put whatever you have in flight now up there. I mean, Josh and John, you guys did a lot of heavy lifting on this. Please take a detailed look at it and see if it meets, some of the intent that you've done. I mean, this is a refresher for everybody at this point. But let's
I'll
let's
look at it whenever you want.
Okay, so
we'll get it up.
So just the text, or should we start inserting images with the assumption that we used our...
I would not insert images yet.
I have a suggestion that might help. We can send it to you guys so you have it, and you can send the draft without images so you have it and then you look at it. And maybe we could discuss it on, so if you can get back to us, if you think it's way out of line and you want to stop us cold before we start adding images, you can just send us an email saying, I don't like this, not obviously in a group, but we can then schedule that for maybe June 11th or June 25th and then, talk about the issues. But if no one sees an issue with the format, we can just go ahead and start adding images. And I will also say, I think June 25th is fairly light. But the other thing I want to say real quick is I will obviously check with Greg, but my understanding from him about meetings in general while we're virtual is that we don't want to make major decisions unless we have to. So I imagine the select board's going to want to wait until we can meet in person to do a lot of heavy lifting on ETC, but it might be a timely enough issue that they're willing to move forward.
So let's put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and that'll be the touch point. Get what you guys have out to the commission as a whole.
We'll put it on the Google Drive for the next meeting.
We'll put it out there tomorrow if you want. I don't care
Yeah.
when you do it, but
Yeah.
put it out put what you have out there. Keep working on it. Put what you have out there. As a commission, we should all look at it and see if we agree with the direction they're going. That's only a couple weeks out, right? So if 2 weeks or 3
Yep.
weeks?
Sounds good.
2 weeks out. So I mean, we can do the touch base, and I think Josh, Johnny, when you guys get it, look at it with the same eyes that you looked at it before, and see if it's in alignment with what you were suggesting. If it is, let's not over-engineer it anymore and move it forward, because I don't think that Ned's got a lot more patience for us on this.
I think you guys are going to be really pleased with it.
I have all the time in the world.
It's sailing season, Ned. You don't.
So I just have one question, and that is, do you indicate in the text somewhere that you're proposing to insert an image, and is there a title to the image, like insert picture of whatever here, or is it got nothing about images?
It's pretty much got nothing about images.
I actually would disagree with that, Lisa.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, we've got some spots where it's clear what is supposed to go there, and honestly, a lot of what we did was more rearranging than
It's
reformatting.
obvious when
So
you read it. Yeah.
Right. And we do actually have we did a little inventory of the images and sort of went of the existing plan and said, what do we like, what do we not, what can we get rid of or change out. So we can share that as well, and you'll get the picture, no pun intended.
Perfect.
Okay, I've got
I don't
one
believe
other
that.
item. Who's got this? Sharon, is your hand still raised on purpose?
No.
Okay. John, you're down. Okay, I got one item. You got something? Go ahead. John?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
I have approached the select board and potentially the trustees in the near future to see if they would be agreeable to changing John's status as an alternate for Tom to just being an alternate. So I'm hoping that the commission supports that, and I'm hoping that John supports that, because I'd like to be able to keep input going. I don't know if I don't know where that's going to go at this stage, but it seems to be a no-brainer to me to keep bodies available. And that way, if any of us need to take a vacation, want to take a vacation, we might be able to just keep things rolling.
Take a vacation.
Yeah, a staycation. So just throw it out there. If anybody has any concerns about that, let me know, and so forth. But we'd heard that Tom will be coming back probably later this summer. I'm not sure of his timing, especially with world travel and stuff being affected. Who knows? But we should be seeing him back at some point as well. So that was it. Just to give folks an idea of something I was working on. We have June. Okay, that's good. So anything else? If not, I'll take a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Shu, seconded by Josh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
7:48.
We are adjourned.
Sharon,
Good night, everyone.
are you gonna
Thanks,
have
everyone.
send that stuff around?